6 o'clock on a Thursday evening. Therefore, it's Thursday Garden Chat, the public service broadcast we bring you every week from Garden Masterclass. Thinking ahead really for the rest of the summer. Of course, we're taking a bit of a break now with live events, but we've got a couple more in the autumn, in September and early October, with the third of our special perennial events at the Plant Library at Church Hill, created by Tom Stuart Smith. We had one fairly recently the other week with great success. A very, very interesting place to meet and talk about plants. So check out the diary pages for that, and for our third look around the Arboretum created by Maurice Foster in Kent. Now we are just about to launch our winter webinar program. We've got everything pretty well organized up to Christmas and probably about a month or so beyond. So that's going to be going live. I think we're going to try and get a newsletter out this week, aren't we, Annie? I hope. And there will be early bird offers on the ticket. So if you book up before the 1st of September, you get a discount on your webinars. We've got a lot of exciting, really interesting stuff coming up. And of course, that will all be, it's all on the diary pages now. It's just that we haven't got the links to buy tickets as yet. Annie, you've been over in the rebel colonies, haven't you?
Yes, I've just been gallivanting. I've literally got back today.
Your favourite garden?
Yeah, I've just got back from Chanticleer. I was there for 12 days teaching. Literally flew in this morning without any sleep. So forgive me if I sound a little bit peculiar. I have had a snooze during the day, so I don't know what time.
We won't ask too much. We won't ask too much of you today, Annie. So,
no. Well, no, but it was fantastic. I had a great group of students from all over the States and Jamaica and Chile.
Wow.
And so a really fun mix of people with a really lovely well, it's always great, and Chanticleer is a fantastic venue. Much support from everybody. So today we're really excited to be back in the States
on
but
the other side,
on the West Coast, with Kara Newport, who's the president of Filoli, and I'm only sorry that I haven't made it there, but I will when I next go to the West Coast of the States. And I just want to throw out a special thank you to Colin Skelly, who I know is watching because I can see your name, Colin. Colin has also just come back from the States, and some of you will remember was on about 3 weeks ago with the Longwood Fellows Program cohort from last year. And so Colin, a special thank you for suggesting Kara. So welcome, Kara. It's lovely to finally get to chat to you. Thank you for joining in first thing in the morning, your time.
Yes, thank you for having me. Wonderful to be here.
Yeah. Fantastic. And Kara, do you want to go straight into presentation, as it kind of explains everything rather than us ask questions? It explains everything about who you are and what you do and where.
I think so. I think it'd be a great opportunity to showcase Filoli a little bit and share a little bit about our garden and our history. So I thought I'd run through that for 20 minutes or so here, maybe a little longer, and then go to questions at the end, if that works.
Fantastic. Lovely. Thank you.
All right. Well, I will jump right in here and begin sharing some of our amazing history at Filoli. Filoli is located in the Bay Area, just south of San Francisco, and it is a beautiful historic house and garden, one of the most intact and continuously operated historic house and gardens in the U.S. So a really special location. Our mission is to connect our rich history with a vibrant future through beauty, nature, and shared stories. So what I thought I would do today is walk you through some of that history, and then get you to where we are today, so that it gives a nice context to where we are. This is a picture of Filoli in the teens, the location, and you can see that we are just off of both the San Francisco Bay and the Pacific Ocean. So beautiful California rolling hills. The site was originally the home to the Ramaytush Ohlone, and it was a village site, and we are still honoring that today, and still partnering with our original Native peoples. And I think it's a really important part of our story because the original Native peoples were agrarians. And that is a theme that carries through all of the history. The Spanish colonists came in the 1700s, not really a great image, but I like to show this one because it shows how beautifully clean the forest floors are in America. I think there was this notion that it was untouched, but actually the Native peoples had been managing it for some time. The Spanish colonists used this area as an agricultural resource for one of their missions in the San Francisco area, the modern day San Francisco area, Mission Dolores. And pretty quickly, the Spanish realized that they needed help. So they gave land grants to the Mexican rancheros. So California was owned by Mexico still at this time, and the Spanish colonists were colonizing. So there was a growing both tension and partnership there. But the original Spanish land grant was given to John Coppinger, who was actually an Irish expat in Mexico who received this land grant. And he married this woman you see here, Maria Luisa Soto, who was from a neighboring land grant. And Maria Luisa holds a very special place. There are a lot of really great women's stories at Filoli, and this is one of the early ones because John Coppinger died, and based on a new Mexican law, actually Maria Luisa Soto inherited the land. And so she was one of the first women landowners in our area and maintained that land even through her second marriage. And so when she passed away and her descendants had gone, they moved the land into its next phase. Primarily during that time, it was actually logging. So the location where we are was heavily redwoods, hence the names Redwood City, which is a neighboring town, and Woodside, where we're located. But you can see the logging operation going on here. And this was also the time when San Francisco was becoming a city. So the gold rush really led to that transformation of the Bay Area. And there's a connection to the gold rush and the Bourne family, who was the next owners of the land. After the earthquake in San Francisco in 1906, San Mateo County, where we're located, became a haven for the wealthy to build their country homes. And so you can see people coming down to a very rugged California location to build these stately homes and estates. So the Bournes purchased the land from a developer at that point, William Bowers and Agnes Bourne, in 1915. And they developed it with their daughter in mind, Maud. They had one daughter. They had made their wealth. It's very much a California story in gold, wine, and water. I call it the trifecta of California. And if you talk about anything when you come here, you talk about those three things. And we talk about water an awful lot. So his final business was the Spring Valley Water Company, which is our primary connection. Before that, though, he built this facility called Greystone. Greystone's located in wine country in St. Helena, which is outside of Napa. And Greystone was built as the original wine collective, where growers could actually hold their wine or their juice to be made into wine and get a better price. So he very much had a community-minded spirit about how to make the most out of California, and took that in. He purchased Spring Valley Water Company because he knew the future was water. So he purchased it after the 1906 earthquake, and that was the time when he started looking at this beautiful property on the peninsula just south of San Francisco. And the peninsula is between the bay and the ocean where we're located. Filoli was to be their sixth home. They had the Empire Mine Cottage in Grass Valley, had a home in Monterey, a house in the city, a house in St. Helena next to their vineyards that they also owned. And then they owned Muckross in Killarney, Ireland. They had purchased this house for their daughter Maud, and a lot of Filoli is modeled after Muckross. So Filoli was developed as their final home, their retirement home, when William Bowersborn went to college, went to university in Cambridge. Excuse me. He was really inspired by the stately home. So Filoli is really an English style home nestled in the California mountains. And this was a place where they were going to grow young. We found that quote in a letter. And Filoli is not an Italian name or a family name. It's named for his motto: fight for a just cause, love your fellow man, and live a good life. It's designed by Willis Polk, who also designed their house in the city. In early designs was called a country cottage. It's a little bit bigger than that. It's 54,000 square feet and pretty stately. But for a Gilded Age home in the US, pretty simple in its design. You can see here, this is the back of the house, how it really doesn't have any grand facades. It was really about the views and vistas around the house. The house was, again, remember, this was their final home, their sixth home. So they furnished it with fine English and Irish furniture, and really kind of modern collections from around the world, and also modern collections of art. So this was a more modern home for them. They had a beautiful taste, which we still try to reflect today. And this is the dining room, the drawing room, and then also the library here. And then the beautiful ballroom, which I wanted to point out above the fireplace, is the Abbey in Muckross. The garden was designed during the Bourne era as well, really focused on the layout of the garden. And of course, as many gardens, this would evolve over time. Bella Warren, was a visionary garden designer who also designed Hearst Castle. She's pictured on the right. You can see very clearly that's her sister on the left. They were originally florists. And they had their own floral company here. So early women business owners, again, continuing that women's story. And that's actually Mr. Bourne's sister in the middle. The Filoli staff, of course, with any estate home, were very important. Most of the gardeners were Italian, and there were lots of families that lived and worked on the property. So this was a true country estate where there were games and families and lots of fun and lots of community as well. And with both the first owners, the Bournes, and the second owners, the Roths, there was a lot of horses and hunts. So very much the English concept of what a country estate should be. One of the last dinners during the Bourne era, they dubbed the Drunks Dinner. So this is the Drunks Dinner, and it's such fun because it was the end of Prohibition in America, which is around 1933. And at this point, both of the Bournes were very elderly and not able to attend. So William's sister, Ida, hosted this event. And it was much fun. They actually wrote a spoof poem for each of the attendees. And their goal was to drink the cellars dry in celebration of the end of Prohibition. And then the Roths purchased the house in 1937. Bill Roth and Lurleen Matson Roth owned the Matson Shipping Company. It was actually Lurleen's father's company. And they had twin daughters and a son, Bill, who were in their teens and early 20s when they moved into the estate. And they were also credited with a Hawaiian connection. Bill Roth was Hawaiian, born in Hawaii. So there's a big San Francisco, Hawaii connection that still exists today, and they're credited with that. They purchased the house for entertaining. They owned a very prominent company. They had twin daughters who had a debut ball coming up. They needed a ballroom. So they purchased the house fully furnished and had wonderful parties here. The debut balls continued into their granddaughters, which are pictured here in the 60s. A really fun use of the property, and that's what it was for. It was a fun, entertaining, hosting kind of home. Many people on the West Coast particularly are familiar with Tony Duquette, who was one of the most popular party planners in the 50s and 60s and did these fantastical displays. His motto was "More is more," and there's a great book about Tony Duquette parties and party planning. There were also some fantastic staff stories during this time. Takichi Taga was the Japanese butler. One of the dark marks in American history is during World War II, when we had Japanese incarceration. Takichi Taga was the butler who was taken to a concentration camp here in America by the Roths, but then later actually brought back with an apartment and supported by the Roth family. It was a really hard and difficult time for all involved. And but he was a really celebrated member of the family. Ki Lo was the Chinese chef. The Chinese and Japanese have very strong influences in the Bay Area still today. So this was evident in the home. And you can see here, Ki Lo was a celebrated chef. He's in the party and talking about what he has cooked for the evening. So so he is celebrated and talked about often. They were modern in their approach. They added a pool. The Roths added a pool in 1940. It's one of the few modern additions to the house and garden. It's very much as it was in the 19-teens, and we are working to refinish that today. The garden is most changed. Lurleen loved the garden and loved flowers. She had a strong influence. It was almost a third of our formal garden is dedicated to cut flowers, and that's really her influence. She had her husband wore a carnation every day in his lapel, so this is very important to have carnations always available and flowers always available in the house. Another great story was Toichi Demoto. Toichi was a garden, a plant propagator and really committed to camellias, and his camellias can be found all over the world. I understand there's a dedicated garden in Adelaide in Australia that has all of his different cultivars, and we have many of them here at Filoli. So he was a very influential person during the Roth era, and still partnering with Bella Warren. They worked on the garden together she worked from the Bourne era into the Roth era until they sold the property or gave the property to the National Trust. Another influential person is Mai Arbogast. Mai was a professor of landscape architecture at UC Berkeley. She is the person credited with encouraging Mrs. Roth to give Filoli to the National Trust. She dubbed it in this article, the Wisley of the West. So you can see here another connection with their English roots and influences. So Mrs. Roth in 1975 made the decision, as she was leaving the property, she moved to a smaller home, to give the house and gardens to the National Trust for Historic Preservation. She, as you can see, wanted it to be a place for culture and horticultural activities, which we really live into today. And the National Trust for Historic Preservation took that on, and today Filoli Center is the owner, or is the operator in partnership with the National Trust, who's the owner. So today, we really work to live into our core values of being inclusive, welcoming, innovative, collaborative, and stewards of this amazing property. We have in total 654 acres, which is surrounded by 20,000 acres of preserved land. So it is really a kind of setting that you don't see often in places where you get these beautiful untouched vistas. As I mentioned, it's a 54,000 square foot house, 16 acres of gardens. We have a board of directors as a nonprofit in the US of 25, 130 staff, $16 million budget, and over 415,000 visitors a year. We are becoming a primary destination for the Bay Area of California. We are very diverse in our visitor demographics. So we are primarily a white audience, but not a majority. And we have diverse representations of Asian, Hispanic, other and Black representatives. And the other for us includes several indigenous or many indigenous populations who are here. This demographic is also reflected in our staff and our board, which is one of the ways that Filoli is being a leader in our industry, is by really being able to leverage and partner with diverse audiences in the community. Filoli today, most people know us because of the films that were filmed at Filoli. So there are many films that were filmed here, including The Game, which is pictured here with Michael Douglas, Heaven Can Wait, Joy Luck Club, The Wedding Planner, George of the Jungle, and we're probably best known as the location of Dynasty. So the flyover scene in Dynasty is the Filoli house, and the season pilot and all of the staging was modeled after Filoli. We are open every day, and people can come throughout the day with extended evenings in the summer. We're a great place for groups. We have a beautiful shop. We have a cafe that serves tea every day. So again, another English influence for us. We have a bar service, so mimosas and champagne flow here at Filoli. And we do wonderful private events here with our rentals program in some of our beautiful spaces. We're a garden for all seasons. We've been most known as a spring garden because spring is so long here. Spring starts for us in February and lasts through May. So if you're looking for a great place in the winter to come, I would strongly encourage you to come here because it's already starting spring. And this was a later in the spring view of Filoli. You can see here the beautiful pool in the spring and early summertime. In the summer, we have roses. We're a very strong rose garden, and these beautiful views and vistas that are very California with the fields of gold. We're also a place of fall color, which is not very common in the Bay Area because we do have this year-round kind of season. We are a climate where it does not really rain from May until November. And so we have a rainy season, which is our winter, but it gives us these beautiful long summers and the spot of fall, which is really nice. We have a holidays program like many historic house and gardens and public gardens are doing today. We have the lights outdoors, but we also are able to decorate the interior of the house and do that in a way that is really unparalleled, beautiful decor in the house. But most importantly, it's a place where people gather. They come with friends. It is a destination. We're really one of the third spaces in the community. And of course, we're a place for presidents. So last fall, President Biden and President Xi of China met here at Filoli. So it was a really exciting time for us. And since then, we have had a real increase in our international tourism, particularly, of course, from China, which has been really fun. In the house, we're returning the house to the Gilded Age glory as we use those historic photos to reset the house and recollect some items. The house was given to the National Trust fully empty, so we are now trying to bring back the furnishings and the historic decor. We have rooms that we've brought back to life, like the Gentleman's Lounge. And we have a library where we're bringing back historic books as well to reflect that collection. Throughout the year, we have programs and experiences for our audience. We have performances. We do a storytelling series. We have a volunteer program that's a little bit different called Service Learning, where we can engage the community in a different way through volunteerism and a citizen science program. We have flora parties, which is flower arranging and wreath making. And then we partner on cultural celebrations like you see here. And this happens year round. So, you know, we have programs in the spring, summer, fall, and holidays so that people can come anytime and really experience Filoli. And you can see here another one of our partner programs with the Hand Food Society, which we use as our launch to spring. It's a beautiful time there in the Daffodil Meadow. We have several youth programs. So one of our ways we give back to the community, we have a preschool program, and we started that in 2022. We do a teen internship program where teens actually have a paid internship, which is unusual here. And then we have our college internship program, which is one of the longest standing horticultural internship programs in the country. It was started over 40 years ago, almost 45 years ago. Importantly, as I mentioned in the beginning, we sit on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Lamchin, an independent tribe of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, the original inhabitants and stewards of the San Francisco Peninsula. And this is a statement that we really live into through our partnership with the Association of Ramaytush Ohlone. This is very important as a lot of especially the coastal tribes, have a disconnected lineage. And so these partnerships allow us to work with current and modern partners who are active in their tribes, active in bringing back tribal history, and active in influencing decisions for today. And this is one of them. We partnered with the tribe, the Association of Ramaytush Ohlone, to create on Filoli's property the Lamchin Interpretive Center, and all of the content was developed by the Association of Ramaytush Ohlone. So it's their story, and they're able to tell their story in a direct and modern way. We also have beautiful creeks, and we're a model in pay equity. This is something that we're really known for. We were one of the first cultural organizations in the country to really study what pay should be for our nonprofit staff, as well, and particularly for our horticultural staff. And I think we'll have a chance to talk more about that later. And as we look ahead, we really are looking at preserving. This is a great photo to give you a sense of that historic house in line with the garden. The garden is actually on the south side of the house and very linear. And we want to preserve that historic core, but we also have the 654 acres. So we want to increase that access. And we really want to address sustainability through our infrastructure, our natural lands management, ecosystem management, improve our biodiversity, really look at agriculture as a system, a management system. It's a great management system for fire management. And then, of course, fire mitigation and water, much talked about as climate impacts in the West. We have 6 distinct California ecosystems. You can see here, this is a trail on the back of Filoli property. 60% of our property today is still redwoods, and that's unusual to have public access on the peninsula in particular to a redwood grove. It's secondary growth, but they're still pretty spectacular and beautiful. So we want to do a better job of managing those. To accomplish this, we developed a master plan concept in partnership with Nelson Bird Waltz. They're based in New York. Thomas Waltz was our partner on this, and really looking at how we can use the entirety of the property. So you can see here our very linear property that actually goes up above the screen. And so some of the early projects we're looking at is a pastoral entrance, really aligning with that country estate feel. Right now, our entrance is very abrupt. It's chain link fence, and you don't really have a sense of arrival. So this will be a big change for us. And then creating hubs in the woods and the different ecosystems for experiences. So this is a concept for a hub in the redwoods that we're calling the Redwood Experience Center, where we can have concerts or gatherings or education programs, food trucks, and all sorts of fun to be had. So that concludes my presentation. I just want to mention, fight for a just cause, love your fellow man, and live a good life is such a fantastic motto that we work to live into today. And we have a lot of plans on the way that we do that. So I will...
We hope that you are enjoying this recording from Garden Masterclass's Thursday Garden Chat program. We started doing this in April 2020 during the first COVID lockdown, when we did it 5 days a week for 2 months, which was a wonderful experience. Since then, we've carried on doing it just for one session a week. We have always done this as a public service. We initially started it as a morale booster for the garden and landscape industry during a very difficult time, and we've so loved doing it that we've carried on doing this. But our presenters give their time for free. We give our time for free. We do incur costs, administrative, technical, and sometimes for support staff, and we would very much appreciate the odd donation to help us keep going and help keep this a free service, which we'd very much like to do. So please go to our homepage, and down at the bottom there's a donate button, and we'll be very grateful. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. What an amazing range of historic photographs.
Fascinating.
Wow.
Fascinating. Yeah, lucky to have all of that. Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. Kara, can you talk about your time at Filoli in terms of, you know, when you arrived and your mission? So from your personal point of view, you know, what your goals have been and how you've kind of put your mark on it. That would be
Sure,
really
yeah.
interesting to know.
Yeah, so I 8 years I've been at Filoli. It'll be 8 years in September. And when I first arrived at Filoli, Filoli was really like a sleepy, quiet little historic house, you know, was really how it was viewed by the community. And I, having, you know, I went through the Longwood graduate program. I've worked at places like Winterthur, worked at the zoos. I did fundraising for a while. So, you know, having had that background, I really knew that Filoli could be so much more. There was so much more potential at Filoli, and so much more potential to welcome the community and engage with the community. So our early sort of vision was just, let's be open and available. Let's find times that we can be open and available. So we expanded our hours. We were closed in the winter, so we opened year round. We started adding programming to attract a broader community. And the response was pretty immediate and pretty strong. When I started, we had about 125,000 people. And before the pandemic, we were already double that. So in a couple of years, we had doubled our attendance. And then post-pandemic, we've doubled that attendance again and are still growing. So it's really about being an asset for the community. We're, you know, adjacent to a major city in the US, a major tourist city in the US. And I, you know, I knew from some of my own travels that people who love gardens, and they want to go to gardens all over the world. So I felt like we were an important destination. And then also I have a real personal passion for historic house and gardens in particular, and having one that has only ever had 3 owners and has been intact for that entire time is a rare treasure. And to have it be really untouched, I felt like just tells such a wonderful California and American story that that we have to share. So that was early in our development. And then as we started growing, you know, and living and working in the Bay Area and talking to our staff and the community, more people wanted to come and wanted to feel welcome and included and invited. And so we began an effort in 2019, actually, to really focus on our board diversity. We did that in partnership with the American Alliance of Museums through a program that they had launched, and it was really effective for us. We went from a 100% white board to a board that was reflective of our community today. So, so very different audience that we serve, and our staff are nearly the same. So, so it has been a really exciting journey, I think, in being a welcoming and inclusive place, and kind of changing the narrative about a historic site. You know, sometimes they're viewed as dusty and old, and didn't want to have that vision. We wanted to be a dynamic community center, you know, a happening place, the third space for people.
Yeah.
And no, you have been very brave and adventurous and risk-taking in your policy on staff pay and conditions. Now, I mean, I think generally we're always complaining that people in horticulture have, you know, pretty poor pay, and often conditions of employment are often poor, and there's all sorts of reasons for this, which are kind of pretty universal. But are there any particular problems with employee remuneration and conditions that you would identify in the United States?
Well, I think pay being the top one, obviously, and our conversation actually started with a conversation around our horticulture staff. So being in the Bay Area, the Bay Area is the third most expensive place to live in the U.S. after DC and Hawaii. So the cost of living is almost double many of the other places in the U.S. It's very expensive, and housing is at a premium and very much a shortage. And our pay was low, and so how can people, come here, live, work here? How do you attract a staff and keep a staff with expertise to do the amazing work we need done here? And fortunately, at the time we were having this conversation, we had a strategic plan that had a goal of attracting and retaining a talented team. And at that time in 18 and 19, my staff turnover was 50%. So I was losing half of my staff every year. It's untenable, it's really unmanageable. And a horticulture staff, almost the entire department turned over in that time period. And so it was really, edging on a crisis. And how can you manage a place like this? And we had some really interesting and bold discussions coming out of the pandemic about how can we do this differently? We were benchmarking against other nonprofits who historically pay lower. So all of our benchmarking was lower. We're benchmarking against our national peers, but we are such a higher cost of living. It didn't really add up. And so we made a decision to base our pay on a living wage, minimum wage. So there's a US calculator where we can calculate living wage. And I know it's being talked about internationally as well. Just how much does it cost to live in a place? And so, and interestingly, I proposed this to our board and, had run the numbers, kind of at the top level of what this might cost to pay all of our staff a living wage, minimum wage. And my board supported it almost immediately. It took us 3 months to implement the change. Now it's taken us 3 years to finish implementing the change, because it's not just about paying a living wage, minimum wage. It's about how do all the other tiers get affected by that? We had to implement a whole new pay system. We partnered with an outside reviewer to assess it. It's been quite a process, but our turnover rate is now less than 20%. My staff are fully staffed and really committed, and the quality of work that we have is much, much more. I will say one of the decisions that went along with it is we did a little bit of staff reduction during the pandemic that we didn't bring back right away. So we combined some positions. We thought differently about some positions and really kind of rethought our whole workforce in order to make that change happen. But we are still supporting it and still leading it. We just had another conversation about it nationally here, and I'm actually talking to some other boards and other people in the community about how they can make it happen, because it's hard to think about. But if we, and this was my statement, if we are leaders in public horticulture, if we want to be known as one of the most beautiful, most visited gardens in the country, how can we underpay our professionals? It just doesn't make any sense. It's just not a logical path forward. And while pay isn't everything, it is a good start. It is an important start for us to make sure that we're paying equitably and make sure that people can live and work here. And there have been great outcomes too. We have people who are having babies, and people are staying longer, and it's just really a lovely feeling.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It sounds as if your board were very supportive and didn't need a huge amount of persuading, but I could well imagine that there might be many situations where this would be a real uphill struggle, and that what you would be arguing with, well, if we pay people better, then we will get better output. But I mean, measuring that output in terms of quality of work, turnover, blah blah blah, it probably must be very, very difficult to quantify.
Yeah, I think it is. One of the quantifiable measurements that we use that I don't think people think about is there's some really good data actually on the cost of recruitment onboarding
Yeah.
and the cost of open positions. So there's
Well, if
actually
you
some
totally lose somebody, you've got to fork out an X.
exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And my number for that was a couple $100,000 a year, you know, in just in loss, you know, and cost of recruitment and open positions and lost work. Now, hopefully in our situation, our business model is a lot of earned revenue. And so we have been able to directly associate positions with revenue outside of horticulture, which then helps fund the horticultural position increases. So we really think outside of the box as far as our programming goes. We run a series of programming that are bespoke and boutique programs that are very customized. We do tours with our curators that that come out with a premium, but it's not just a tour. You get a gift, you get a glass of champagne, you get a special behind the scenes access. It's really a luxury experience. And our horticulture staff participate in those programs as well. And so it's important to have professionals who are knowledgeable about all of that.
And can I ask you a bit more about your education programs? You mentioned service learning program. What does
Yes.
what does that mean? I don't understand
Yes.
that.
So volunteerism. So when we think about our whole staff complement, you know, we had, when I started, we had a very robust volunteer core. Volunteers were largely credited for keeping Filoli going for many years. And well earned that credit, but the volunteer program wasn't really built on the ability to be flexible and grow. And so as we grew, we had to rethink our volunteer program. And one of the things that and I think it's different all over the world, but one of the models of volunteerism is to have really, you know, regular volunteers that have committee structures, they have management responsibility. And we had that kind of model here. And what we realized is it had kind of taken the service out of volunteerism, that it was really more about the benefits and what they get and access and things like that than it was about what the volunteers were, what the service of volunteerism was. And so we shifted our volunteer model away from that kind of regular volunteer model to a model that is more like, you know, a trail cleanup day or an episodic volunteer program. So we call it service learning. And we sort of also combined it with adult continuing education classes, which we were also running an abundance of. And the adult continuing education class is also great, but served a very small audience, the same audience over and over again. And meanwhile, the younger audience is getting all their information on YouTube. So it was not really meeting the needs of a growing and changing audience. So through service learning, it's actually, you give a little volunteer time and you get an education program, you get behind the scenes access. So it's a, you know, roughly 3-hour day. And half of it is volunteerism, and then half of it is a program, an opportunity to meet people, opportunity to get out into an area that maybe you haven't seen at Filoli, and a really interesting model, I think, for us, and it's been really effective. We're serving the same number of people as we did at the end of our former volunteer program, about 600 a year come through that program. But it's a much different audience, very diverse. People bring their families, kids can come and participate. It's set up like a project. So there are 3 or 4 days that you can come in and do the same project. So we repeat it. It's much easier for our staff to manage. And we get a lot of work done. So it really is hitting all the marks for us.
Yeah. And I don't know, I've got a big thunderstorm happening here at the moment, so I hope it's not too noisy. But and in terms of education, horticultural education, are you training horticulturalists sort of a la Longwood and various other gardens like that, or are you know, do you have a system in place for training?
We have our internship program, which is our primary model for that. But we also we're actually going to be adding an apprentice program. And we're doing some exchanges. We're actually doing an exchange with Sissinghurst,
Yeah.
that exchange program. And so we're adding to that right now. But our general way that horticulturists are hired here at Filoli is that basically their first year is a training program.
Right.
So because there aren't a lot of horticulturists who are trained in fine gardening these days.
Yeah.
And so it's a different need, it's a different requirement. So the first year is really, you know, a training program where they can learn more. We spend more time with them and give the staff an opportunity to kind of build up into the professional fine gardening horticulturist position.
And I also want to ask you about your climate, because you mentioned roses are a big thing at Filoli. And I
Right.
know that, you know, on the East Coast, roses struggle with the humidity.
Right.
Do you have high humidity levels? I guess you must do if no,
No.
no,
No,
because you're
it
because
doesn't rain in the summer. So it's relative, it's more humid than it
right,
has been, the cold
right,
climate. But and we do get the fog. So we have a little bit, we have intermittent humidity, but it
right.
dries out, so it's a little bit easier for us. Our roses, though, our rose collection, we really we don't have an American Association rose collection or anything like that, because we focus on roses that like it here.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
so we really focus on the roses that love our climate,
yeah,
the kind of a little drier, a little warmer. We use drip irrigation because, you know, water is of such a premium. So that's really important. So that some roses don't love that either. So we have to
yeah,
really find the right rose for us. We
yeah,
also are keeping an eye on it. I know a lot of Australian gardens just can't do roses anymore at all. So,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
we have to continually
Mm.
adapt our garden to the changing needs.
Yeah, yeah. And your relationship with Thomas Waltz studio, is that sort of ongoing? Are there lots of things that are going to be happening and changes? Is that a
So
big
yeah, they did the master plan, they did the comprehensive site plan, and then they have moved into the first project with this, which I showed a picture of, the
yeah,
design of new entrance.
yeah,
And then they'll continue to work as advisors on the various projects that we bring online,
yeah,
so that we have that continuity of vision.
yeah,
It's important, I think, when you're changing things. Although our plan is a very light touch, it's a very light footprint. We're not building lots of buildings.
yeah,
Some of our buildings are even mobile, a
yeah,
little bit different than the way other folks have been thinking about it, because in California, building a building is really not the best way. And so we really want to think about the best way to reduce our impact on land, to be sustainable,
mhm.
to be really conscious about the future climate and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's so interesting. And your own role, I mean, does it involve a lot of travel to other gardens to sort of connect with them, I guess worldwide? You mentioned Australia,
Yeah.
but you know, to sort of to figure out how other people are tackling similar issues. Yeah,
Yes, definitely. I'm honored to be part of several organizations. One is the International National Trust Organization, which is based in England but represents the trusts of all the different countries. It's an amazing organization. Especially there's a lot of really good work being done at heritage sites on climate action, because the risk is so high of
mm,
losing some of the heritage sites. So it gives me an opportunity to talk to the different national trusts in the way that they're handling that balance between the physical structures, the built environment, the natural environment, what takes priority, how
mhm.
to sort that out. And so we model a lot after both Australia and England. Those are our
Right.
two. A little bit of Spain too in there. Those are kind of our models. Spain with the Mediterranean climate has a lot of similar, and fire has a
Yeah.
lot of similar issues to us. And then the National Trust of the UK and also the gardens there. I was just at Kew in May.
All right.
So you know, the gardens there are just so similar in our intention, not necessarily some of our actual conditions, but in the look, in the display, in the way we work with the public, is very similar.
Mm.
So we have a lot of national and international models. Yeah.
Yeah. yeah, that's really interesting, very interesting. I mean, I do want to invite anybody who has any questions for you to put any questions into the chat box. But so far we don't have any questions coming in, but if anybody does have any, please do fire away. That would be great. And you're thinking ahead, thinking forward. I mean, where would you say, you know, Filoli will be in 10, 15, 20 years time? What's your sort of vision for further down the line?
I think we have the two big opportunities. So the way Filoli is sited on the property, you know, we have the house in the middle and the garden to the south. And then on the north and the east sides, we have agriculture that is maintained, but not really interpreted to the level it could be. We have a historic olive grove. We have a historic apple orchard. We have historic pasture lands. So we really want to build those back out, and actually we want to get back into olive oil production and things like that. We produce our own jams and hard cider from our apple orchard now. So we're doing some of that, but we really want to build out our agricultural and food connections a lot more. And then we also want to partner with the Association of Filoli on the natural lands management. So we want to do in lands management. We have 6 ecosystems. So interpreting those, we have almost all the ecosystems represented in California.
Wow.
So it's very much a California microcosm, which is really fun and exciting. So I think that 10 years from now, we hope that Filoli is really kind of that, like a California destination, day-long experience, multi-day experience, where you come, you have a wonderful lunch, you tour the house and gardens, but then you go on hikes and you go for an apple cider tasting, and, you know, just really have this immersive experience.
Yeah, it's very, very multifaceted, isn't it? I mean, much more so than I had imagined. I was just thinking it's a historic house, a historic garden, but my goodness, there's so much more going on. And
it is, and it's untouched, which is really exciting. You know, I mean, it's really just such an open book opportunity for us to take advantage of it, and in all aspects, the house and the garden. You know, a lot of states like this fall into disrepair, and we have not. You know, we're just having that continuity is so important.
And that kind of answered my other question, which was about the greater estate, you know, how it's being used, because you've got a huge estate. And so that the idea of the agriculture and exploring that was, that's really fascinating. Wow, gosh, there's so much to see. I can't wait to come out.
And I think, you know, I think that as I believe that Filoli, like some of our peers, like Longwood, like some of the gardens based in larger cities, you know, I think we have the potential and we have the site to host, you know, over 1 million visitors. I don't think that would be a challenge. And also our weather is fantastic. You know, winter is not winter here. Winter is maybe a little rainy, but okay, you know, it's really quite beautiful. It's mossy and green, and just a lovely place to come. So so that would be my other thing. Come visit. You know, comes and visits Filoli. It's beautiful year round. It is already an amazing experience that I think we can just build on. And I think that we're really offering, you had asked about the programs, but I think we're really offering a suite of different and unique programs and ways for people to access the location that are really much more immersive.
No, that's fantastic. Well, gosh, thank you so much, because I mean,
thank you.
It's been a long time in the coming, only because I think Colin might have suggested connecting with you almost a year ago now, and we're so pleased that you found a time to do this, because I know, you know, your role, you're very, very busy, a lot of traveling, and so I just want to say another thank you to Colin for making the connection and saying, you've got to get this garden, you've got to get this woman on to talk, because that's it's been fantastic to hear.
So we'll post this to YouTube, and the last part we'll post as a podcast to our new to be launched in the autumn podcast program, and also I will include a link for that very impressive piece you wrote for the AAM newsletter, which I think for anybody who's actually professionally involved in this field would make very interesting reading. A bit techy for the rest of us, but I think for those of you who aren't involved,
Yeah.
in illustration. I think, you know, he makes some very good points there.
Yeah.
Great.
lovely.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank
Well,
you.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kara. It's been fantastic. And I really look forward to at some point meeting you in person, either over this side or over that side. But yeah, it's
Okay.
been absolutely fascinating to hear more
Thank
about
you.
Filoli.
Yeah, thank you both. And
Yeah.
thank you for allowing me
Yes.
the time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, that's our pleasure. Our pleasure. All the very best. And thanks everybody who's joined in live. And yeah, take care. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
We hope that you are enjoying this recording from Garden Masterclass's Thursday Garden Chat program. We started doing this in April 2020 during the first COVID lockdown, when we did it 5 days a week for 2 months, which was a wonderful experience. Since then, we've carried on doing it just for one session a week. We have always done this as a public service. We initially started it as a morale booster for the garden and landscape industry during a very difficult time, and we've so loved doing it that we've carried on doing this. But our presenters give their time for free. We give our time for free. We do incur costs, administrative, technical, and sometimes for support staff, and we would very much appreciate the odd donation to help us keep going and help keep this a free service, which we'd very much like to do. So please go to our homepage, and down at the bottom there's a donate button, and we'll be very grateful. Thank you.